Sixth graders, turn in your book to page 155. Today we're going to be looking at solving percent problems. We're going to start with a little bit of vocabulary. So we have two new vocabulary words that you see here in the middle of your page. The first one is proportion. A proportion is an equation that shows that two ratios are equivalent. For example, if I had something like 3/5 is equal to 6/10. This would be a ratio, this would be another ratio, and both of them are equivalent because to get from 3 to 6, I'd multiply by 2, and to get from 5 to 10, I'd multiply by 2. So those ratios are equivalent, so we call this whole thing here a proportion. Okay? Today we're going to look at a specific kind of proportion called a percent proportion, where one ratio compares a part to a whole. So let's say I have 60% out of 100. That is equal to 3 out of 5 of something. And this one is a percentage, so we call this a percent proportion. Let's review just a little bit fraction, ratio, and percent and how those are related. So here when we look at 2 to 5 for the fraction, or 2/5, what do we call the part? Well, the part is on the top, and we call that the numerator. The whole is on the bottom, and we call that the denominator. And that's something you learned quite a while ago. Ratios, we just started talking about this year. So we can have a ratio that's 2 to 5, comparing 2 of something to 5 of something else, or 2 of something out of a group of 5. We can also write that other than fraction form, which is this, in word form, 2 to 5, or using a colon, 2 to 5. Now we're going to talk about how percentages relate. If I have 2 to 5, to get from 5 to 100 would be times 20. So if I multiply the numerator by 20 also, I would get 40. And 40 out of 100 is a percent. So 40% of 5 equals 2. And that's giving us a good indication about the kinds of things we're going to look at today. Turn to 156. On this page, the book talks a lot about finding these percents using a number line. And I want to look at how this works on number 1. So it says 10 is 25% of what number? So you notice here's 10, here's 25%. And they've broken their number line into groups of 10 because this was 10. So if I go 25 to 50%, we add 10. 50 to 75%, we add 10. 75 to 100, we add 10. So 100% in that whole group would be 40. So using the percent proportion and not having to draw out these number lines, we're going to set up this percent proportion. So in your notes, I want you to write, here's our percent proportion formula. So go ahead and write this in your margin. So if I have something, this is the part to the whole, like we have in every fraction. In percents, we're going to use the words is and of as key indicators of part and whole. And that's going to equal a percent out of 100 because every percent is out of 100. Now this is super important, so make sure you have that recorded there. Then if we use that proportion to look at 10 is 25% of what number? So I'm going to start with the percent. So here's my 25% out of 100. I don't have to put the percent sign. If you want to, so you remember that's your percentages, you're welcome to. Then I need to look at this number 10. So 10 is. There's my key word, is, but I'm also thinking 10 is kind of like equal. So 10 and 25% were equal, and you saw that right here in the bar graph, or the number line. So 10 has to be the part. Okay, well, typically when we solve these equivalent ratios, we looked for a relationship. How do I get from 25 to 10? And you could do that here, and you would divide it by 2.5. But there's another way that we can solve this. So if I had 10 out of something is equal to 25 out of 100, we can multiply the numerator and denominator that we have. So that would be 10 times 100, and that would give me 1,000, and divide by the number that's remaining. So I would divide this by 25. I think how many 25s is 100? There are 4, and there's 10 100s and 1,000. So 10 times 4 would give me 40. So this answer here is 40. If you do that in a calculator, 10 times 100 gives me 1,000, and divide it by 25, I would get 40. And we saw that on the number line, so our answer would be 40. Look at number 2. Now we're looking at Landon's music library. Country music makes up 75% of Landon's music. If he has downloaded 90 country music songs, how many songs does Landon have in his music library? So I'm going to set up my percent proportion. 75 is my percentage out of 100. I can always start there. 90 is the country songs, but we want to know how much he has total in his music library. So because the music library is the total, that would go here on the bottom. That's what we don't know. And 90 would go here. Well, it's not easy to get from 75 to 90, so I'm going to use my cross products. So 90 times 100. So 90 times 100. I'm not sure why I just put that in the calculator, but I did. So equals 9,000. And then we're going to divide by 75. So if I divide this by 75, I find out that Landon has 120 songs in his library. So this would be my final answer. I want you to go ahead and take a moment here at the bottom of the page, and I want you to complete the got it questions. Once you've completed it, go ahead and resume the video. Okay, now that you have completed these problems, let's take a look at letter A. So 30 is 50% of what number? So I'm going to start with something equals something. So 50 out of 100. And I need to determine if 30 is the part or the whole. Well, 30 is the 50%, so it's going to go here on the top. I'm going to go 30 times 100, which would give me 3,000. And I'm going to divide it by what's remaining, which would be 50. So 3,000 divided by 50 would give me 60. So 30 is 50% of what number? 60. Letter B, 60 is 20% of what number? So here's my percent proportion. 20% out of 100. 60 is the same as 20% is, tells me it's the part. This one I can actually solve by looking at the relationship. How do I get from 20 to 60? I multiply by 3. So to get from 100 over here, I'd multiply by 3, which gives me 300. So letter B should be 300. 60 is 20% of 300. Peyton spent 60% of her money to buy a new TV. The TV cost $300. How much money did she have? So 60 out of 100%. $300 here is part of her money, so that needs to go on the top. How do I get from 60 to 300? I'd multiply by 5. So 100 times 5 gives me 500. So she had $500 to begin. Okay? Go ahead with me to the top of page 157. Let's practice this a little bit more using this percent proportion. So number 3, 15 is 30% of what number? You notice in the problem, they have 30 out of 100, and then 15 is the part because 15 is 30%. How do I get from 30 to 15? I would divide by 2. So 100 divided by 2 gives me 50. So my answer there, 15 is 30% of 50. Let's look at our next example, number 4. 225 is 75% of what number? So first I'm going to start with my percentage. 75 out of 100. 225 means it's going to go on the top. So how do I get from 75 to 225? Well, if I take 225 divided by 75, that gives me 3. So I'm multiplying by 3. I multiply both by 3 to keep them equivalent. So this would give me 300. So 225 is 75% of 300. If you would rather, you could solve that one using cross products and division. So I could take 225 times 100, which gives me 22,500, and divide it by the remaining 75, which would still give me this answer of 300. Either way is perfectly acceptable, but you still need to set up this proportion. This has to be in your work. Okay, I want you to take a moment, pause the video, and try letters D, E, F, and G. Once you're finished, go ahead and resume. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and take a look here at this first one, letter D. I have already set up the percent out of 100, and that equals 75 as the part, because 75 is 15%. To get from 15 to 75, I'd multiply it by 5. So to get from 100 to over here, I'd multiply by 5, which would give me 500. So letter D should be 500. Okay, letter E, let's set up our percent proportion again. So 9 is 36%. So 36 out of 100. 9 is 36, so that means it's the part. I can figure out the relationship here. To get from 36 to 9, I divide by 4. So to get from 100 over to here, I divide by 4, which would give me 25. So letter E should be 25. Let's look at letter F now. So 70% out of 100. 7 is, so that tells me it's the part. I would divide by 10. Because I'm getting smaller, it's division, not multiplication, which would give me an answer of 10. So F should be 10. 7 is 70% of 10. And then letter G. So I have 35 out of 100. 7 is 35%. They're the same, so they have to be on the same line. I'm getting smaller, so it's division. So divide by 5, which I do the same to the bottom. Divide by 5, which gives me 20. So 7 is 35% of 20. Okay, take a look at those answers. If you need to review any of them, you can always rewind at any point in time. But those should be your solutions that you got. Go to the top of 158 with me. Here you see a word problem. It works the same way. So before 1982, pennies were 95% zinc and 5% copper. If 100 pennies minted in 1980 have an approximate mass of 15 grams of copper, what's the total mass? Well, there's nothing about zinc, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that right away. And these dates can be confusing, so I'm just going to look at what I have here. So we know that 5% out of 100 is the copper, and 15 is the grams of copper that we have, which is the part. So how do I get from 5 to 15? Times 3. So 100 times 3 would give me 300. So the total mass of 100 pennies is 300 grams. I want you to take a moment and try these guided practice problems. Starting with question number 3, I'd like you to do 3, 4, and 5. When you're finished, go ahead and resume the video. On number 3, 120 is the part, equals 30% out of 100. You can use the cross products if you'd like, or I can get directly from 30 to 120 by multiplying by 4. So 100 times 4 gives me 400. Number 4, 60 is 15% out of 100 is equal to 60 is, so that's the part. I could look at the relationship by multiplying by 4, or you could multiply your cross products. So I could take 60 times 100, which gives you 6,000, and then divide by that remaining 15, which would also give me 400 for number 4. And then number 5. In the first year of ownership, a new car can lose 20% of its value. So right away, 20 out of 100. If a car lost $4,200 of value in the first year, how much did the car originally cost? So originally cost is going to be the whole. This is how much it lost. So 4,200 is going to go on the top as the part. I could either look at the relationship here between 20 and 4,200, or I can use cross products and division. For this problem, let's use our cross products and division for practice. So 4,200 times 100 gives us 420,000, and we're going to divide that by 20. which gives me 21,000, and it's dollars was original cost of the car, and that would be pretty standard. Okay, so today you learned about how to solve using a percent proportion, using either cross products and division, or looking at the relationship between the parts and the whole. And hopefully we're feeling a little more confident about this as we continue on.